Have you tried intermittent fasting? Are you aware of what intermittent fasting is? It's also called time-restricted eating. There are many ways to do it, and there are a lot of confusing facts that have come out in recent years regarding intermittent fasting. And so I am going to try to dispel the myths and give you the actual story on what it is and why you might want to try it. I am Stephanie Phillips Markstein. Hi, and I help health conscious people optimize their physical and emotional well-being so that they can show up in the world as the best version of themselves. Fasting is one of the biggest weight loss trends to arise in recent years. It's been endorsed by A-list celebrities. There have been a ton of books written on the subject, and in fact, it was the 8th most Googled diet in America in 2018. But here's the thing, it shouldn't be looked at as just another fad. I know there have been a lot of diets out there that have come and go and have really been debunked over the years. Intermittent fasting is not one of them. It's also called time-restricted eating, and it's actually been studied by very well-known scientists and doctors around the world who have discovered that it helps with a lot of various things. There is a doctor in Berlin who has used intermittent fasting for his patients and has discovered that it's helped with really some real chronic ailments such as diabetes, high blood pressure, rheumatism, bowel disease, as well as certain pain syndromes like migraines and osteoarthritis. So there are different ways of going about it. This doctor recommends a 14-hour stretch in your eating pattern, in which case in your fasting. So in other words, you would either skip breakfast or dinner and make lunch your biggest meal of the day, basically your only meal of the day, or at least your biggest meal. If you did breakfast or dinner alongside it, you would have probably less at either one of those meals. But he does recommend lunch being the main meal, and I can explain why that is. But it's not as difficult as it sounds, because if you're sleeping from, say, 11 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning, give or take, that's already 8 hours. So you only need to add another 6 hours onto that, and then you've hit your magic 14 hours. Now, I will say that there are different numbers, different people espouse different numbers, different fasting amounts. Some people say, 18 hours is better. Some people say 13 hours is the magic number. I think it varies from person to person, so I don't think that there's necessarily a magic number, but it's the fact that you are trying to keep most of your eating in about an 8-hour span. And of course, if you eat an earlier dinner, which is, let's say you decide you're gonna skip breakfast, if you eat an earlier dinner, which really is much better for you, and you're finished eating by 7 and you go to sleep at 11, then you've added on another 4 hours. So now you're up to, whatever that is, whatever I just said, 8 plus 4. You've already done 12 hours. So you only have to add 2 more hours in the morning before you eat again. I actually tend to eat even dinner a little bit earlier than that. I try to be done with dinner by 6:30, and then I don't eat again until lunch the next day. So I will often do a 16-hour stretch rather than 14 hours. But it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that you get the majority of your calories in a short time span during the day, and not over the course of a long period of time. So there was, to back this up with science, there was a report done in 2012, and I am going to use my notes to read this to you so that I don't mess it up. It was done at California's Salk Institute, and it basically showed what this the possibilities of this approach and what it can do. And it took a group of mice, and they fed this group of mice a high fat diet around the clock for 18 weeks. So basically a lot of calories in a high fat diet, fed throughout the day, all day, every day for 18 weeks. And then they took another group of mice and they fed them basically the same diet, same number of calories, but they restricted the eating to an 8-hour span. And so then they compared the two groups. The first group, who ate all day long, ended up with all sorts of, fatty liver, pancreatic disease, diabetes. The group of mice that only ate in the 8-hour span actually ended up being much healthier and lived longer. So to explain the logic behind that, our bodies, when we eat, our bodies produce insulin. And the release of insulin interrupts the process of autophagy. Autophagy, which comes from Greek, meaning self-devouring, it basically is the cell's ability to get rid of bad cells, the diseased cells, and break down those molecules and rebuild better, healthier cells. It's an incredible thing that our bodies can do. But the thing is that autophagy doesn't happen when insulin is being released. So we want to, and autophagy basically helps to counteract the aging of cells and builds immunity. So we want more autophagy, and less insulin release. And so when we fast, when we use intermittent fasting, it helps to stimulate autophagy, and it allows the full molecular process to take place. So scientists have also found that fasting can actually contribute to brain health and happiness. There was a neurobiologist who retired this year from the National Institute of Health, and he demonstrated that in experiments for 2 decades, that nerve growth factors contribute significantly to helping to counteract negative moods and to increase positivity. And he found that fasting, by restricting calories and exercising, spurs distinct increases in the best known nerve growth factor, which is called BDNF. Not only that, but test animals in his lab showed a significantly, those who were put on the fasting regimen showed a significantly lower risk of developing Parkinson's disease, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, and Alzheimer's. So this really has some significant implications for human beings. Now, they will have to do more research on, and it'll have to be a much wider range of research and to be done on humans before we can determine for sure that fasting can help to slow down Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. But it is a very exciting development, and one that we want to see more of. We want to know what could happen with that. So you're most likely asking at this point, well, if we're only going to eat 2 meals of the day, which meal do we skip? And here's the rub. You have probably heard, as I have, growing up and even relatively recently, that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. The problem with that is that not everyone, there is no one size fits all diet plan for anyone, because we are all different. Our cells are all different. Our DNA is all different. And so we all respond differently to different types of diets and different types of eating routines and patterns. So, but the general rule of thumb is this. You want to skip the meal that's the easiest to skip when you are doing intermittent fasting, because fasting is hard. It's especially hard for a lot of, I mean, it's not hard for everyone, but most people find it difficult. So if skipping breakfast is easier for you, then that's the one you skip. If skipping dinner is easier, then you skip dinner. Again, it doesn't really matter. The key though is to have the majority of your calories at lunchtime, because lunch is during that time of day is when your body needs the most energy to keep your core temperature up and to keep your, everything going and processes moving for for what the activities that you're working on. So as always, I like to provide science to back up what I'm saying. And in this article that I am referring to, there was a UK-led study that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition that showed, this was in 2016, that showed that among 69 women, those who consumed most of their calories at lunch shed 3.3 pounds more in 12 weeks than those who ate a bigger dinner. So it stands to reason that eating the majority of your calories at lunch is probably a better way to go. Again, that's that time of day is when your body needs the most calories anyway. So there was even a study that was done in 2016 that suggests that fasting could conceivably help in preventing the recurrence of cancer. There were about 2,400 women with early stage breast cancer who provided information on their eating rhythms. And of those, roughly 400 suffered from new tumors within 7 years. But the women who fasted for 13 hours nightly had 26% less risk of recurrence of the cancer than the control group. So they think that there's a possibility that one of the reasons is that cancer cells don't survive with a lack of sugar. So if you're not feeding the cancer cells, they're not going to grow as quickly or as easily. So there's one other piece to this that I want to just point out before we finish this, and that is that, fasting isn't just a diet plan or a healthy way to eat. It's also a kind of a psychological challenge, because as I said before, fasting is difficult for most people. And so if you can force yourself to not eat those extra few hours, after you get up, or even, after the lunch, if you don't eat, if you end up doing the dinner, skipping dinner, you have overcome a challenge that many people cannot overcome. And there's something that can be said about that kind of psychological challenge, which can then apply to other areas of your life where you are being challenged and you need to overcome something difficult. So bear that in mind, that intermittent fasting, while it is a really healthy, in fact, there is some, we didn't talk about this in the article, but there is some research to suggest that it may be one of the few ways that we can actually reverse the aging process. Which, if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. But think about it as more than just an eating plan, as more than just a way to lose weight, but also a way to really kind of take control of your mind. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, I'm Stephanie Phillips Markstein. I'm glad you joined me today. If you like this, please like and share it. And also, if you are interested in trying the keto diet, I have created a keto-friendly PDF that basically kind of hacks all of the hard things about keto and puts them in one easy place, and answers a lot of those questions that people have about the keto diet, the ketogenic diet. So if that interests you, it's called Keto for Beginners. It's a quick and easy hack that gives you recipes, 3 exercises to trim your waist, and frequently asked questions answered. If that sounds good, click on the link below and pick that up. But in the meantime, join me on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern for Saturdays with Stephanie on my Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you guys are having a great week.